The sleek silver ship cut through Earth's atmosphere, its engine straining against unexpected gravitational fluctuations. Commander Tahi gripped her control panel, her delicate six-fingered hands tensing as warning lights flashed across the Lyrian vessel's bridge. "Emergency landing protocols initiated," she announced, her melodic voice steady despite the crisis. "Officer Jun, secure all diplomatic materials. This is not how we planned first contact with the humans." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, their tall, slender forms gliding through the ship's interior. Every Lyrian aboard possessed the same iridescent skin that shimmered with subtle blue-green hues, symmetrical features, and graceful proportions that their civilization had cultivated over thousands of years of careful genetic refinement. "Landing site identified," reported Navigator Min, her large almond-shaped eyes scanning the terrain below. "Isolated research facility. Minimal human presence detected." Tahi nodded approval. "Perfect. Less chance of causing widespread panic among the savages." The Lyrians had observed Earth for decades before deciding to establish formal contact. Their anthropological studies had confirmed what their aesthetic sensibilities suggested. Humans, with their varied appearances, asymmetrical features, and primitive technologies, must occupy a lower rung on the galactic evolutionary ladder. It was the natural order of things in Lyrian philosophy. Beauty reflected advancement, and advancement created beauty. The ship landed with a gentle thud in a clearing near a cluster of simple white buildings. Through the viewports, they could see a lone figure emerging from the largest structure, approaching cautiously. "That's a human," whispered Officer Sun, unable to hide her distaste. "The images in our database hardly captured how crude they appear." Tahi studied the approaching figure. Dr. Han was of average height by human standards, with dark hair cut short, wearing what appeared to be standard Earth scientific attire, a white coat over simple clothing. His face possessed none of the perfect proportions or luminous quality of Lyrian features. "Remember your training," Tahi instructed. "We represent the Lyrian Confederation. Maintain composure regardless of what we encounter." The airlock cycled open, and Earth air rushed in, richer in nitrogen than they preferred, carrying unfamiliar scents. Tahi stepped forward as the designated first contact specialist, her silver ceremonial robes catching the sunlight. Dr. Han stopped a respectful distance away, his expression showing surprise but remarkable control. He raised one hand in what the Lyrians recognized as a peaceful greeting gesture. "Welcome to Earth Research Station 17, he said simply. "I'm Dr. Han." Tahi performed the formal Lyrian greeting bow, her movements fluid and precise. "I am Commander Tahi of the Lyrian Diplomatic Corps. Our arrival comes earlier than intended due to technical difficulties." The human's eyes widened slightly, but he maintained his composure. "You speak our language." "We have studied your transmissions for many cycles," she replied. "Our linguistic experts have mastered most Earth languages." Before further exchanges could occur, a high-pitched alarm sounded from within the ship. Officer Jun emerged with urgency, his perfect features tightened with concern. "Commander, the cooling system for the primary drive is failing. Radiation levels rising in the engine compartment." Tahi felt a flutter of genuine concern. Without proper cooling, the antimatter containment could destabilize within hours. They were too far from the nearest Lyrian outpost for assistance. She turned back to the human, expecting confusion or fear. Instead, Dr. Han was already pulling a small device from his pocket and consulting its screen. "Your ship's emitting theta radiation patterns," he stated matter-of-factly. "If that's from a cooling system failure, I might be able to help." The Lyrian crew exchanged skeptical glances. How could this primitive being possibly understand their advanced technology? "Our systems are far beyond Earth science," Officer Jun said dismissively. Dr. Han shrugged. "Physics works the same everywhere. If you're using a liquid coolant system with magnetic containment, which your radiation signature suggests, I've worked with similar principles in my research." Before Tahi could respond, a surge of energy caused the ship to shudder. Without hesitation, Dr. Han sprinted toward the vessel, calling over his shoulder, "You need to power down now before the containment field collapses." Surprised by his boldness, Tahi found herself following his suggestion. "Power down the main drive," she ordered. "Your design is elegant," he admitted, "but this alloy reacts poorly with Earth's atmospheric composition. It's corroding from the outside in." While the Lyrian crew watched with a mixture of disbelief and reluctant respect, Dr. Han improvised a temporary bypass using materials from his research station. His hands moved with precision despite their obvious anatomical differences from Lyrian limbs. As the radiation levels began to drop, Tahi studied this human with new curiosity. He worked without self-consciousness under their critical gaze, focused entirely on solving the problem rather than on the impression he made. "There," Dr. Han said finally, sealing the last connection. "This will hold for a few days, long enough to synthesize a permanent replacement compatible with your systems." For the first time in her distinguished career, Tahi found herself reevaluating her initial assessment of a species. This human, despite his unsophisticated appearance, had demonstrated intelligence, quick thinking, and technical skill that no savage should possess. Perhaps this first contact would be more interesting than she had anticipated. The morning sun cast long shadows across the research station as Dr. Han worked on the damaged Lyrian coolant system. 5 days had passed since the emergency landing, and the beautiful aliens still watched him with a mixture of fascination and distaste. Their tall, perfect bodies and shimmering skin made them look like living statues next to his ordinary human form. "Your solution is unexpected," Commander Tahi said, watching Dr. Han connect Earth technology to their advanced systems. "Our engineers would never attempt such a hybrid approach." Dr. Han didn't look up from his work. "Sometimes the direct path isn't available, so we find another way. Humans are good at adaptation." Tahi tilted her head, her movements graceful as flowing water. "Is that why your species has survived despite your physical limitations?" Dr. Han finally paused, turning to face her. "What exactly do you consider our limitations?" The question seemed to surprise her. "Your fragile bodies, your short lifespans, she gestured vaguely at his face, imperfect forms." Instead of taking offense, Dr. Han smiled. "Would you like to see something?" He led the reluctant commander to his laboratory. The Lyrian crew had avoided this part of the station, preferring to stay near their ship. Inside, holographic displays showed complex molecular structures rotating slowly in the air. Biological samples were carefully preserved in specialized containers. One wall was covered with images of different species from Earth, animals, plants, and microorganisms. "This is my life's work," Dr. Han explained, activating the main computer. "I study how different biological systems interact, how diseases might jump between species, and how to prevent it." "You expect diseases to travel between worlds?" Tahi asked. "History has taught us to be careful," Dr. Han replied. "When Europeans first contacted isolated human populations, their diseases killed millions. I don't want first contact with alien species to repeat that tragedy." He pulled up a simulation showing a modified coronavirus structure. "This is a model of how a human virus might mutate to infect Lyrian biology, based on the medical data your ship broadcast during landing procedures." Tahi stared at the display, her perfect features showing genuine surprise. "You developed this in 5 days." "I've been working on the theoretical framework for years," Dr. Han said. "Your arrival just gave me actual data to test my models." From the doorway, Officer Jun watched with growing interest. Other members of the Lyrian crew gradually joined, drawn by the unexpected discovery. "You've dedicated your career to protecting species you've never met?" Officer Sun asked, her musical voice tinged with confusion. Dr. Han nodded. "All life deserves protection. Appearance tells you almost nothing about what matters." Later that evening, Dr. Han invited the Lyrians to share a meal. He had carefully analyzed their nutritional needs and prepared foods that would be safe for their consumption. The Lyrians hesitated but eventually agreed. As they ate in the station's common room, Dr. Han played music, a violin concerto that filled the space with haunting beauty. "You create this sound with such primitive instruments?" Officer Min asked, her large eyes wide with wonder. "Humans have made music for thousands of years," Dr. Han explained. "It's one way we express emotions and ideas that can't be put into words. Your species values art." Tahi seemed genuinely surprised. Dr. Han pulled out a tablet and showed them images of human achievements: the Sistine Chapel, ancient Egyptian pyramids, modern architecture, and sculptures from cultures around the world. Minutes later, Dr. Han was examining the ship's engine room with unexpected confidence, pointing out the ruptured cooling conduit to the astonished Lyrian engineers. "We've always created beautiful things," he said simply, "even when we were struggling to survive." The next day, as Dr. Han worked on synthesizing a permanent replacement for the damaged Lyrian component, Tahi joined him. She watched his hands move with precise efficiency despite their clumsy human design. "Our educational systems teach that species with less aesthetic development are naturally less intelligent and culturally advanced," she admitted. "Your existence challenges this foundation of our society." Dr. Han looked up from his work. "Most human societies once believed similar things about other humans who looked different from themselves. It nearly destroyed us many times. Yet you overcame this." "We're still working on it," he admitted. "But we've learned that judging by appearance is usually wrong and always limiting." A week into their unexpected stay, Officer Jun fell ill with a reaction to Earth's atmosphere. The Lyrian medical officer struggled to stabilize her condition, their treatments ineffective in the unfamiliar environment. Dr. Han stepped in, using his research to quickly identify the problematic compound and develop a counteragent. He worked through the night, his inferior human body showing unexpected endurance. When Officer Jun recovered, the atmosphere on the station changed. The Lyrians began asking questions not just about Earth technology, but about human culture, philosophy, and history. They shared meals with Dr. Han without hesitation. Some even requested to hear more human music. Commander Tahi found Dr. Han in his lab late one night, analyzing Lyrian biological data. "You've surprised us," she said simply. Dr. Han looked up with tired eyes. "How so?" "When we first landed, we saw only your physical form and judged accordingly. But your mind." She paused, searching for words. "Your species may have taken a different evolutionary path than ours, but there is nothing primitive about you." Dr. Han smiled. "Maybe that's the most important lesson of first contact. True intelligence recognizes itself, regardless of the package it comes in." For the first time, Tahi's perfect features formed a genuine smile in return. The high-pitched alert from the Lyrian communication system broke the peaceful morning routine. Dr. Han looked up from his microscope as Commander Tahi rushed into the laboratory, her usually perfect composure visibly shaken. "We've received an emergency transmission from our homeworld," she announced, her musical voice tight with concern. "A hostile species called the Mach has entered this sector. They've already destroyed 3 outposts near the border systems." Dr. Han set aside his research samples. "Are they heading this way?" "Yes. Their path suggests they're targeting both Earth and Lyria." Tahi activated a small projector she carried, displaying a 3-dimensional star map. Red dots marked the destroyed outposts, with a projected path cutting directly through Earth's solar system. "What exactly are the Mach?" Dr. Han asked, studying the map with growing concern. "Resource consumers," Officer Sun explained as she joined them. "They operate with a hive-mind intelligence. They don't negotiate or communicate. They simply take what they need and leave devastation behind." Dr. Han's face grew serious. "I need to alert Earth authorities immediately." "Our defense fleet has been mobilized," Tahi continued, "but they won't arrive for at least 3 days. By then." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Within an hour, the quiet research station transformed into a makeshift command center. Dr. Han established communication with Earth's defense network, explaining the situation with remarkable clarity despite the potential panic such news could cause. The Lyrians watched with growing respect as Dr. Han coordinated with human authorities. His calm efficiency contrasted sharply with their initial perception of humans as emotional, disorganized creatures. "If we reconfigure your ship's sensors and link them with our satellite system," Dr. Han explained, sketching a rough diagram, "we can create an early warning network. It won't stop them, but it will give us valuable time to prepare." Officer Jun, now fully recovered from his earlier illness, studied the humans' plan. This could actually work, with some modifications to account for the quantum fluctuations in mock propulsion systems. They worked through the night, the previous barriers between human and Lyrian falling away in the face of common danger. Dr. Han contacted other research stations, and soon additional human scientists arrived to assist. Commander Tahi observed the newcomers with fascination. They varied widely in appearance. Tall, short, different skin colors, different body types. Yet all worked together seamlessly, each contributing their expertise without hesitation. "Your species has such diversity," she commented to Dr. Han as they calibrated the sensor array. "Yet you function as a unified whole when threatened." "Necessity brings clarity," Dr. Han replied. "Differences seem less important when survival is at stake." As the defense preparations continued, Tahi found herself reevaluating everything her society had taught about the connection between physical beauty and evolutionary advancement. These humans, with their imperfect appearances, displayed ingenuity and adaptability that impressed even the most skeptical members of her crew. On the third day, as they finished installing the modified sensor network, Dr. Han suddenly paused his work. His eyes fixed on one of the monitoring screens, noticing a subtle distortion pattern. "Something's wrong," he said, moving quickly to the main console. "These readings don't match our projections." Officer Min joined him, her slender fingers flying across the controls. "He's right. There's a quantum signature here that shouldn't be present yet." Dr. Han's face paled as understanding dawned. "They're already here. The Mach must have sent scout ships ahead of their main fleet." The confirmation came moments later as the sensor array detected 3 Mach vessels entering Earth's upper atmosphere. Unlike the elegant Lyrian ship, these were dark, angular constructions that resembled massive insects. "They're heading directly for this location," Officer Jun reported, his voice tight. "They must have detected our sensor network." Commander Tahi straightened to her full height. "We need to evacuate immediately. Our ship can." "There's no time," Dr. Han interrupted, already moving toward the communications array. "They'll intercept any launch attempt. Our best option is to hide our technological signature and maintain communication silence." The assembled humans and Lyrians looked to him with surprise. This was not the fearful reaction they expected from a lesser species facing a superior threat. "The forest caves half a kilometer west offer natural radiation shielding," Dr. Han continued, gathering essential equipment. "We can move our critical systems there and continue monitoring without being detected." As they rapidly dismantled key components, the first tremors shook the building. The Mach ships had taken position directly overhead. "Move quickly but quietly," Dr. Han instructed, helping Officer Sun with a heavy sensor unit. "They're scanning for energy signatures and life forms." Commander Tahi found herself following the humans' lead without hesitation. In just days, the dynamic between them had shifted dramatically. No longer did she see him as a primitive being to be studied and tolerated. Now she recognized him as an equal, perhaps even someone to be relied upon in this crisis. As they slipped into the dense forest surrounding the research station, Dr. Han paused to look back. The Mach vessels hovered ominously, dark shadows against the blue Earth sky. "They won't stop with this facility," he said quietly. "Once they confirm their initial scans, they'll expand their search pattern." "Then we have very little time to prepare a defense," Tahi replied. Dr. Han nodded grimly. "Yes, but they don't know what they're up against. They see humans and think we're easy prey. A common mistake, Tahi admitted, that my people also made. Let's make sure the Mock regret it even more than you did, Dr. Han said, a determined smile crossing his face as they disappeared into the shadows of the forest. The forest cave provided temporary shelter as Dr. Han set up the emergency communication equipment. The small group of humans and Lyrians worked quietly, aware that the Mock ships still circled overhead, searching for them. Outside, rain began to fall, providing additional cover for their heat signatures. The main defense forces have been alerted, Dr. Han whispered, adjusting the secure channel. But the closest military response team is still 2 hours away. Commander Tahi nodded, her luminous skin dimmed in the cave's darkness. Our fleet will arrive in approximately 18 hours. We must remain undetected until then. The temporary peace shattered as a low mechanical hum penetrated the cave. Officer Jai, monitoring the improvised sensor array, turned with alarm. They've deployed ground units, he reported. 3 search patterns converging on this location. Dr. Han quickly checked the small screen. The Mock ground forces appeared as red dots moving through the forest with mechanical precision. They must have detected our equipment shutdown sequence, he said. We need to move deeper into the cave system. As they gathered their essential gear, Officer Sun noticed something on the monitor. One team is heading directly toward the emergency medical cache we left for the injured humans. 2 researchers from a neighboring station had been hurt during the evacuation. Dr. Han had hidden them in a sheltered overhang with supplies before leading the main group to the caves. Without hesitation, Dr. Han grabbed a small pack. I'll redirect them away from that position. Commander Tahi caught his arm. That's suicide. The Mock will detect you immediately. Not if I use the storm to mask my approach, he replied calmly. The injured can't be moved again. I won't abandon them. Before she could protest further, he slipped out through a narrow opening in the rock face. The Lyrians watched on their scanner as his single life sign moved purposefully through the forest. He was deliberately creating a trail away from the hidden injured, leading the Mock in a different direction. I don't understand, Officer Min said quietly. He's risking his life for just 2 members of his species. It's what humans do, one of the Earth scientists explained. We don't measure value by numbers. Outside, Dr. Han moved carefully through the storm, using the rain and wind to cover his sounds. He caught his first glimpse of a Mock ground unit, a metal carapaced being with multiple limbs, its sensors sweeping methodically through the underbrush. He deliberately stepped on a branch, creating a sharp crack. The Mock unit immediately turned, its sensors focusing in his direction. Dr. Han moved away from the hidden medical cache, drawing the pursuers after him. Back in the cave, the Lyrians watched with growing tension as all 3 Mock search teams converged on Dr. Han's position. He won't survive this, Officer Jun said, his perfect features showing genuine distress. Commander Tahi made a sudden decision. We can't leave him out there alone. Prepare weapons. The Lyrians looked at her in shock. Their diplomatic mission had not been intended for combat, and their cultural aversion to violence ran deep. Our aesthetic perfection means nothing if we abandon someone who helped us, she said firmly. I'm going. Anyone who wishes to remain can stay here. To her surprise, every member of her crew stood ready to follow. They emerged from the cave as a Mock energy weapon discharged in the distance. On their scanner, Dr. Han's life sign flickered weakly. Moving with their natural grace now turned to tactical advantage, the Lyrians approached the confrontation site. They found Dr. Han pinned down behind a fallen tree, 3 Mock units closing in from different angles. Without verbal communication, the Lyrians separated and surrounded the area. Commander Tahi signaled, and they attacked simultaneously, using the emergency weapons from their ship. The Mock, surprised by the new threat, divided their attention. Dr. Han seized the opportunity to throw an improvised explosive device, a compressed oxygen canister with a chemical trigger, directly at the nearest unit. The explosion temporarily disabled the Mock's sensory systems. In the chaos that followed, The Lyrians and Dr. Han managed to eliminate the immediate threat. As the brief but intense skirmish ended, Commander Tahi rushed to where Dr. Han had collapsed against a tree trunk. A Mach energy weapon had caught him across the shoulder and chest, leaving a severe burn. "Why did you come?" he asked weakly as she examined his wound. "Because you were right," she replied, applying emergency medical treatment. "Worth isn't found in appearance or even in ability. It's found in choices." They carried him back to the cave, where Officer Sun, trained in xenobiology, worked to stabilize his condition. The other Lyrians stood nearby, their expressions solemn. "Will he survive?" Officer Jai asked. "His physiology is responding to treatment," Officer Sun replied. "Humans are remarkably resilient." As Dr. Han drifted in and out of consciousness, Commander Tahi remained by his side. She studied his face, the features her people had once deemed primitive and unattractive, and saw them differently now. "On our world," she said quietly to him during a moment of lucidity, "we have spent thousands of years breeding for perfect appearance, believing it reflected perfect minds and souls. But you have shown us that true advancement lies elsewhere." Dr. Han managed a weak smile. "Humans learned the hard way that judging by appearance nearly destroyed us many times. We still struggle with it. When our fleet arrives," Commander Tahi promised, "the first report I will send to our homeworld will challenge everything we thought we knew about evolutionary advancement. Your species may not have our physical symmetry, but your capacity for sacrifice reveals a different kind of beauty." Dr. Han closed his eyes, strength fading. "Not just humans. You came back for me. That shows the same quality exists in your people too. Perhaps we're not so different after all." As he slipped into healing sleep, Commander Tahi realized a profound truth. The greatest evolution was not physical at all, but in the capacity to see beyond appearance to the true measure of any sentient being. The Lyrian fleet arrived in Earth's orbit with impressive precision, their ships forming a protective barrier between the planet and the approaching Mach vessels. Commander Tahi stood beside Dr. Han on a hillside near the research station, watching the distant lights of ships maneuvering in the night sky. "Your fleet admiral has requested my presence at the command briefing," Dr. Han said, his shoulder still bandaged from the earlier confrontation. "They seemed surprisingly interested in a human perspective." Tahi nodded. "I may have sent several detailed reports about your insights and abilities. Our military strategists were particularly impressed by your theory about the Mach communication patterns." During his recovery, Dr. Han had noticed something unusual in the data they'd gathered from the defeated Mach ground units. Their communication signals contained patterns that resembled distress codes rather than attack commands. The command briefing took place aboard the Lyrian flagship, a vessel of stunning beauty and efficiency. Dr. Han stood before Admiral Du and his senior officers, the only human in a room of perfect beings. Yet for the first time, he felt no judgment in their gaze, only genuine interest. "I believe we've misunderstood the Mach," Dr. Han explained, displaying the communication patterns he analyzed. "These aren't invasion protocols. They're resource location signals focused on very specific mineral compounds. They've destroyed 3 outposts," Admiral Du countered. "Their intentions seem clear. Those outposts were built on the richest deposits of crystalline thorium in this sector," Dr. Han pointed out. "What if they're not inherently aggressive, but desperate? What if they need these resources to survive?" The Admiral considered this perspective. "Even if true, how does this help us defend our worlds?" "It gives us a chance to communicate instead of just fight," Dr. Han replied. "I've developed a translation algorithm based on their signal patterns. We could try to reach an understanding." Against traditional Lyrian military doctrine, Admiral Du authorized the attempt. Using the modified communication array from the research station, Dr. Han broadcast his translated message to the approaching Mach fleet. The response came within hours, a complex series of signals that the algorithm slowly deciphered. Dr. Han worked without rest, adjusting parameters and refining translations until finally meaningful communication emerged. They're a symbiotic species, he explained to the assembled Lyrian and human representatives. Their biological components require specific minerals to maintain their mechanical exoskeletons. Without these resources, they face extinction. And this justifies attacking other worlds. A Lyrian official asked skeptically. They didn't know we were sentient, Dr. Han revealed. Their sensors detect resources, not civilization patterns. They thought our outposts were automated mining operations. With this breakthrough, negotiations became possible. Earth scientists identified alternative mineral sources in uninhabited star systems. The Lyrians offered technological assistance for more efficient extraction methods. The Mach provided knowledge about stellar phenomena previously unknown to either humans or Lyrians. 3 months later, Dr. Han received an unexpected invitation to visit the Lyrian homeworld as Earth's first official ambassador. The journey aboard a Lyrian diplomatic vessel gave him time to prepare for what Commander Tahi had warned would be a challenging reception. Our society has been built on aesthetic perfection for millennia, she explained as their ship approached the gleaming Lyrian capital. Many will struggle with your appearance, just as we initially did. I understand, Dr. Han replied calmly. Change never comes easily. His arrival created exactly the sensation Tahi had predicted. The Lyrian High Council, 12 perfectly formed beings in ceremonial attire, visibly recoiled when he entered their chamber. Whispers filled the gallery where hundreds of Lyrians had gathered to witness this historic moment. Dr. Han stood before them, neither apologetic nor confrontational. He simply waited until the murmurs subsided. Honored Council, he began, I bring greetings from Earth. Our worlds stand at the beginning of what I hope will be a long and beneficial relationship. An elder counselor spoke, her voice beautiful but cold. We acknowledge Earth's assistance during the Mach crisis. However, many question whether our civilizations are truly compatible given our different evolutionary paths. Dr. Han smiled. Different paths often lead to the same destination. Lyrians perfected physical form. Humans developed adaptability. Both approaches have value. Your appearance suggests a less advanced species, another counselor stated bluntly. Appearance can deceive, Dr. Han replied. You see imperfection before you. I see the result of a species that survived ice ages, plagues, and our own violence to reach the stars. Our asymmetries tell our story. A younger council member leaned forward. Yet humans create beauty in art, music, and architecture that rivals our own. How do you explain this contradiction? Perhaps because we recognize that perfection isn't uniform, Dr. Han suggested. In human history, we've learned that diversity of appearance, thought, and approach creates resilience and innovation. Our greatest advances came when different perspectives combined. His words resonated particularly with younger Lyrians. Recordings of his address spread rapidly through their communication networks, sparking unprecedented debate about the foundation of their society. 6 months later, Commander Tahi, now Ambassador Tahi, welcomed Dr. Han to the newly established Interspecies Cooperation Center on the Lyrian homeworld. As they walked through the elegant building, Dr. Han noticed something surprising. Several young Lyrians working there had modified their perfect appearances. Some had changed their skin patterns, others had adjusted their facial symmetry. It began after your speech, Tahi explained. A movement called diverse beauty has gained popularity among our youth. They question whether genetic uniformity truly represents advancement. Dr. Han watched a group of Lyrian and human scientists working together on a new project. Change happens one mind at a time, he observed. Yes, Tahi agreed. And sometimes it takes meeting just one person to transform an entire world's perception. Outside the center's windows, the beautiful Lyrian sunset painted the sky in vivid colors, not uniform, but varied and ever-changing, its beauty found in its very diversity.